I'm from Natural England, but today I am presenting on behalf of the Coastal and Estuarine Community of Practice. So this is a contribution slide for everyone who helped me with information or gave me some slides. So thank you ever so much. And also a big thank you to Milo, who's already been shouted out today, but because he helped support me loads, also chase people for information. So thank you very much. For the people who did give me some information, I hope I do it justice. Sorry if I get some information wrong. As I said, I am presenting on behalf of other people's work. So today I'm going to split my presentation into some themes. So I'm going to start talking firstly about habitats, then go on to partnerships and programs, and then some updates, organisational updates. So firstly, I'm going to talk about beneficial use of dredge sediments. So for people who don't know them, they're defined as using dredge material in a manner that is beneficial to nature and society. So there are two places I'm going to talk about that is happening in the East Mid region. One's the Blackwater Estuary and the other one's Levington Lagoon. So in the Blackwater Estuary, 85,000 cubic metres of sand was placed on the foreshore, and that happened at Old Hole Point, Cobmarsh and Salisbury. And this helped to create and replenish 6.7 hectares of sand and shingle. And then this was used to protect the salt marsh because of the wave action basically was absorbed, and it acted as a barrier to larger waves. It also provided great habitat for nesting birds such as oystercatcher and littleterns, as well as a coastal flood defence, and it also protected 406 hectares of floodplain grazing marsh. Levington Lagoon is a Suffolk Wildlife Trust site and a Suffolk Yacht Harbour. So they have been doing, they've been using buds here since 2014, so it's just an ongoing process of their work, but they've also had the additional support of the Harwich Harbour Authority. And so this, in the last year, they had put some coir structures, so you can just see them just there through the salt marsh, and that is going to help to retain the sediments. But they're also they've changed their monitoring, so basically the buds have been so successful, the salt marsh has expanded, so they actually can't monitor it in the traditional way. So they're now starting to use LiDAR, which is really great. And some of the key benefits for this area is that it protects the salt marsh, it gives resilience to the area, and it connects up the SBA. So I'm going to now talk about Ben Acre and Kesington Flood Management Project. As I was going through my project, I realised there's a typo on this. It's not the second largest realignment site. It is the second major realignment site. So on the Dynamic Coast, the first one was at Medbury in Sussex. So this scheme is going to provide a sustainable flood risk protection for properties. It's basically replacing a pumping station, an EA pumping station that was built in 1955. And so what's basically happened in this area is Ben Acre Ness, the sand and shingle ridge is moving north, and it's exposing the pumping station. And this to basically coastal erosion. If coastal flooding happens in that area, 35 homes will be affected, 600 hectares of farmland. So what they're doing is they're constructing an inland flood defence. They've moved the pumping station, which you can see is just in where I think it's a caravan site. And the benefits of that is it's going to create 80 hectares of intertidal habitat, and then it's also going to create some freshwater habitats as well. This work is ongoing at the moment. I was told that they're actually on site building it now. And it's going to have completion in 2030. So there's also been some great work done by the National Trust. You may have seen this in the news at Norvey. So the work here started actually in early 2025, and what they did was they created these platforms of dredge sediment, and then on those platforms they put the disused barges, which you can see in the photo, and then they filled them with mud. The next phase is to fill them with more mud, and surround them with mud. And the idea for this is the final crest height of the barges is actually going to be higher than the highest astronomical tide. And it's going to be in line with coastal sea level rise, and it will be at that level till beyond 2100. So it's really resilient in the face of climate change. Then they're going to top the islands with some gravel, and it's going to make it an ideal nesting site for little terns and oyster catcher. But it's also got a second benefit as well, because as you might be able to see, they're actually blocking a creek, so it will slow down the wave action from the tide, and it will help deposit sediments, so to help protect the salt marsh and sediment deposition in that area as well. I recommend that you watch the video. It's really good, and it's on the National Trust website, and so just put a link to that. So the other thing that's happening in our area is we've got some landscape recovery projects happening. So the Lincolnshire Wash Landscape Recovery Project is phase 1, so it's one of the first projects. They submitted all their papers to DEFRA last year, and I think it's just going through the final stages. RSPB will know more as they're the lead partner. And basically it is going to help secure the future of the salt marsh in the Wash. It's looking at how to make these habitats more resilient and how to manage them in a better way to improve habitat for nesting birds, which is one of the photos there, it's a red shank. But it's also looking at sites off the salt marsh, so these mosaical wetland habitats that are creating behind the seawalls are, which is so important. But it's not only that, they're also creating opportunities to engage people with the Wash. It's, as we've heard this morning, it's a fantastic place and people don't know enough about it, so they've got that engagement, and that is part of this really fantastic project. Wilder Humber, so Wilder Humber is happening, see in the Humber, and they've done some great work in the last year. So they completed a seagrass planting trial, and they did 3 different methods. So they did direct injection seeding, seed bags, and transplantation cores. And the outputs of this will inform the strategy to scale up seagrass restoration in the area. In total, they did 192 transplants replanted with a 92.7% success rate. So after the area where the transplants were taken has shown full recovery 3 months after they were the transplants were taken from that area, which is really interesting. And in total, they've done 2 hectares of planting, which has brought up the entire area of 18 hectares planted. They've also been trialling some oyster restoration works. So they've deployed adult oysters, sprout and shells, and juvenile oysters directly into the intertidal areas of Greedy Gut in the Humber estuary. And so in total it's 3,000 adults, 25,000 low-density sprout and shells, and 250,000 high-density sprout and shells. So that's a lot of oysters. 280,000 in total. They've also been doing some great work on sand dunes and salt marshes, so they're doing adaptive grazing at Spurn Point, and that's to improve botanical diversity, habitat structure, and reduce some invasive species. And they're hoping it would strengthen the breeding bird protection in that area. They're continuing with the build of the Seaview Farm over in the Lincolnshire coast, and that's going to have a seed bank, and they're hoping to do some seed collection later on this year. They've also identified areas of couch grass cutting in the Humber estuary, so that's on the salt marsh, and it's going to trial management techniques, and the results of that will be used nationally. We're also doing a separate trial in the Wash as part of the landscape recovery trial, so it will really join up how we do these management trials across the area. They've done some great communication events. They've been on Countryfile and had some major TV news coverage. They've had 19 events. They've got 200 volunteers that have had over 1,000 hours recorded. So, working our way down the coast, and we go to Blakeney Harbour. So this is a multi-habitat restoration project. It's a collaborative stakeholder project looking into marine landscape scale recovery. So the Blakeney Harbour is home to loads of coastal habitats such as salt marsh, seagrass, and shellfish. However, many of these have been lost or degraded. So WWF commissioned the Norfolk Coast Protected Landscape to work out with partners what is happening in that area. Last year they conducted a feasibility study guided by 3 priorities, which was to support healthy ecosystems that provide benefits for wildlife, help the harbour to adapt to the challenges of climate change, and protect local livelihoods that depend on the coast for fishing, recreation and tourism. So this map that you can see shows the potential options for marine and coastal restoration. I think there are quite a few people from the Blakeney Harbour project, so if you want to know more, please reach out to them. So this slide is a little bit different. I know we're meant to be reporting on things that have happened in 2025, but I just think this is quite a nice slide, so I have included it. So this is transforming the Thames, and so this is what they're planning on doing. So this is another partnership project, and it's working together for a shared vision of the Thames estuary. So they want to restore, connect, and make it more resilient. So they have got these 5 objectives that they want to achieve in 2026. So they've got 15 restoration sites focusing on 6 habitats. 7 of them they're hoping to deliver in 2026. They're looking to enhance the area and look to understand what threats and pressures are affecting it. So they're looking into what the factors of poor water quality, and they're going to use meta-analysis of the current issues of historic water quality data, and hopefully that will help them to identify drivers and the evidence base for that. They want to build capacity, so by strengthening restoration capabilities and through knowledge exchange, and they're going to have a conference this year on the 9th of November. And then they want to inspire people the belief that nature recovery can happen. And they're going to do that through social media and in artists and residents. And then they want to enable scale, so they want to research ecological function to understand future restoration works. So remembering, I think Eve did quite a good job, so I'm not going to touch too much on it, but I just want to say that they've got some amazing tools to help put the right restoration in the right area, and they've got loads of maps and some of those handbooks that you can download. They also help to unlock funding, and they always search for new funding as well. But one of the big elements that they do is partnership working. So they've got a conference in July in Scarborough, so recommend you attend. And also they've got several projects that they have funded in the East Mee region. So they've funded Wild Humber and Turning the Tide. So now I'm going to talk a bit more about what functioning land has been created in 2025. So the top picture is Sandylands. So in 2020, I think the National Trust bought a disused golf course on the Lincolnshire coast, and they've turned it into a wildlife haven. This year they've got black-tailed godwits, spoonbills and lapwings have already been spotted, and it is a great opportunity to engage more people of the Lincolnshire coast. Then you've got the Species Survival Fund that the RSPB organised, so that was looking at wetland restoration across 9 sites, and they've just done all that fantastic work. And then the Martlesham Wilds, they've done, it was a £340,000 project that delivered grassland and scrub mosaic approach to 80 hectares on 117 hectares of former organic farm. They've created 2.5 hectares of open water, and then they put 2 new viewing platforms because this is next to the Debden Estuary which is a triple designer for SBA. So by installing those platforms, they were reducing disturbance to those features. And then, so this is all about organisational updates. So in 2025, the new guidance was published for coastal stewardship agreements. So this will be able to unlock funding to help people do more for nature recovery. So I'm going to basically talk about the coastal habitats. So they unlocked some funding to be able to pay landowners and farmers to be able to do some work. So one of them was create a new action, for maritime cliffs and slopes, and they split out the action for sand dunes and shingles to make them unified habitats. And then, so this is all the other habitats that that you can also get funding for. So then we've also done autonomy. So this is a pilot that the Natural England are looking at. So the Corrie Review came out last year, and it revealed a powerful truth that environmental regulation must evolve if nature is to recover and thrive. So Natural England responded to this by developing the concept of earned autonomy. So we want to empower organisations with a strong track record to lead nature restoration work with greater autonomy. So we're going to do that with a range of different things, so looking at simplifying triplet site consenting and NR management, EIA regs, and there's pilots ongoing with that at the moment. So basically we just want to make nature recovery easier. But more about that will come out. The pilots that are being undertaken at the moment is in internal workshops creating criteria, and there's also, preparations underway for external consultation in 2026. I am going to have to completely read this because it confused me slightly. So the salt marsh code has been updated. The BSI feedback required changes and updates to the guidance documents, management plans, various forms, landowner agreements, monitoring plans, and the salt marsh claimant dispute forms to ensure all documentation was up to date and comprehensive. They updated the risk tool because new products have become available, such as the Met Office erosion map for the UK, which has now been incorporated. They've got the carbon calculator, which received some updates, so that's been put into it. And going into the financial year of 2026-27, they're going to pilot the salt marsh code ahead of full operation. They're developing a roadmap to understand key steps needed to enter into the pilot stage, which will include confirming a host's legal ownership. These conversations are complex, but they're learning from previous codes, such as the peatland and woodland code. So that's a very whistle-stop tour of everything that's happened on the coast.